Welcome, welcome. We wanted to start with thinking about relationships we had with our teachers because today's focus is around shared mindsets for supportive relationships. So, Grad Partnership, who are we? Where have you come to today? We are an organization whose mission is to partner with communities to use high quality student success systems so that schools are empowered to graduate all students ready for the future. And this is a group of organizations that you can see listed here that are collectively working together toward that mission. Our objectives for this series, the community of practice in general, are to increase awareness of and plan action for building effective student success systems, and also build community across schools and districts who are interested in doing this work, so that we can turn to each other and learn from each other. So who's going to be leading you today? Well, my name is Sarah Howard, and I'm the Director of Professional Learning at the Network for College Success, one of the partner organizations in the Grad Partnership. We are supported by Mallory and Sophia from the Hatcher Group. And I'm going to be handing it over to my partner, Chris Payne. Will you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Community of Practice. I'm Chris Payne with the Grad Partnership, Executive Director at the Network for College Success. And so happy to have you here with us today. So before we get this party really started, in the chat, could you please share your name, your organization, and your location so we can shout out our participants, our folks in the house today. So glad to have you. Sarah, because I can't see the chat, can you shout out folks as they come up?
I can. Megan from the Bar Center is in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Hey,
and
Megan.
We have Crystal from Northeast Ohio, the state support team.
Hey, Crystal.
Savannah joining us from California. Electra from New Visions for Public Schools. Shout out to New York.
Hey, Electra. Hey, y'all.
And Martha from Albany, New York, the New York State Department of Education. Love our state folks joining us.
Yes, we do.
Gary from New Mexico.
And they keep coming.
I know.
It's okay.
So Michigan, let's go Midwest. Okay.
Yes. Represent today, y'all. So just keep dropping your names, your locations in the chat. And we're so happy that you have decided to join us today. We're gonna have a riveting good time in this community of practice. And so before we do get into this, really like jump on in, let's go over our community agreements. First, we not me. Remember, we're going to be sharing stories and airtime. Everybody in here has a story and we want to hear them. And we also realize that we have about an hour together. So we're going to do the best we can to make sure we share our stories and also be mindful of our airtime. Except non-closure, again, we're here for a short period of time. We're going to start a conversation that we hope you will continue in your schools and districts. Our Chatham House rules. Basically, the individual stories stay within this space. We're asking you to keep those confidential, but to take the lessons that you learn from them out into your practice. We are sharing to learn. Again, all of us have some wisdom. All of us have some experiences that are going to enrich our community of practice. So please share with an ear to learn, have a learning heart, and take on a learner stance. And then last but definitely not least, let's make room for joy. We got to have some joy. We got to have some fun. All right. And so with that, I want to make sure that I orient you to our activity guide. So Sophia is going to be dropping in the chat a link to our activity guide. And let me give you a quick orientation of it. The activity guide contains our agenda for the day. It also contains some very important links that we will ask you to click into as we go through today's session. Lastly, at the bottom, we have some resources that Sarah will talk a little bit about near the end of our time together. So make sure you can open that link, click the link, make sure you make a copy for yourself, and let's dig in. All right, so what are we doing? All right. We are now in the November session of this particular series. So session 2, say that 3 times fast. Session 2 of series 1, where we're building the conditions, building the efforts for student success systems to thrive. We will reconvene again in December to close out this particular series. Today, we're focusing on shared mindsets for supportive relationships. All right. Shared mindsets for supportive relationships. And so, with that being said, here we are. And so, what do we mean by shared mindsets for supportive relationships? We're talking about, what do you believe about your students? How do you cultivate the relationships that result in them not only having a sense of belonging and connectedness to the school, but also those relationships that build their skills to prepare them for successful lives as adults? And so, as we start today's session, we're going to start with the voices of young people, bringing them into the space. And so, we asked a few young people about their experiences, and we asked them for their advice. So, let's listen for how they need us to show up. All right. And let's play that video.
My English class is really nice. That's a class where I think we're all like really comfortable with each other. My teacher's name, her name is Miss Iqbal. So she's really nice. She also like plays around with us, like not like unprofessionally, like just like as a person, right? She's really nice. She likes cats. So I showed her my new phone case because it had cats. She was like, oh my God, that's so cute.
All right. So my teacher gave us space to have our opinions and let them grow and let them incubate without them having like greater repercussion. And that way that like was like, that in itself was giving us respect.
I really love my school. Teachers are really supportive. And if they notice I'm doing bad, they always try to make sure I'm doing good.
Oh, Miss Morgan, our math teacher. So she's not really our math teacher anymore. So she has stuff to do at the hospital. But she was amazing because she was understanding, respectful, and knew how to get things rolling.
Very more warm and kind. They ask, how was your day? How you doing? How you fitting in? Especially because I'm a new student at where I'm at. But it's very much more nicer, and they always check out how you doing. So I love that. How I feel overall is that I feel like it's more inclusive. Like you're all together. It's more of a family.
My school, nothing really is a problem. No, I haven't found any problem about like having students need a voice, because like already the students have a voice because the principal there is open to conversation. Done.
So far, like in where I've been at in my school, I don't really know much about the student government, nothing like that. But we do take surveys every once in a while, just to say, oh, how's this teacher doing? How's the teacher doing? What did they do? How do they say things like this? Do they tell you what to do? Do they ask? Stuff like that. And it's not as such as it's more personal than it is just like generalized. I'll say that.
If I wish that adults would have been more willing to step back from their power and see where some of their rhetoric might be wrong, and like actually put value behind the voices of students. And I feel the way that when I mean like putting value behind student voices it, I believe that means that you're fully practicing stopping and listening and trying to understand their perspective and what they're going through.
He's very funny. I have one-on-one talks with the students to see what they're experiencing. He lets us say what we want, but he still makes sure that we're engaged in his lesson and make sure that we're still knowing what we're meant to be known.
A lot in the beginning of the year, for a good while, she would always have us she would ask questions like, what's our favorite snack, our favorite food, our favorite, ask us if you're a cat, our favorite animal, and all that stuff. Just different questions about us, what do we like and stuff. And we'd have discussions about them in class, So I feel it slowly, we all start talking to each other, we talk to her and stuff. It's kind of a really comfortable environment.
Especially people in power or your teachers or administration or whatever, accepting when they're wrong, when you're wrong, is extremely vulnerable and it's very human at the same time. You know what I mean?
First things first, to be respectful, to be understanding. Second, to ask the kids what they need and what they want in their environment and what activities that they want. And falling those into a category of a subject. And that's it.
I would say the advice I would give is be very more social, because especially us coming back from COVID and stuff like that. My freshman year, I was pretty isolated. I didn't want to go nowhere. I didn't want to do nothing. I don't want to talk to nobody. But my sophomore year, I came out my shell a bit more, and I had more fun in high school. I talked to more friends. I went out. It was a good time. So I would suggest getting more hands on and communicate more with your students.
Like to thank our young folks for sharing their perspectives. And let's take a moment now at the top. Well, before we started the video, I did ask us to think about, as we're watching this video, what are we hearing from young people about how we need to show up as adults in their lives, as educators, as supporters of their success. Let's take a moment we could drop in the chat, or if we can get a couple of people who would like to just come off mute and share. What are we hearing? Hearing show up as listeners, be open and honest and personable. Yes. Yes.
Just small things matter as well, Chris. The kids can choose where they want to sit, and they respected that. I think it was Carter who said that, so that resonated with me.
Thank you.
Yeah, willingness to be vulnerable and authentic. Love that.
Yeah, asking the students themselves what they need to be successful. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Crystal. Welcoming spaces that some teachers created for students. Yeah, yes. Feeling welcome.
Yes, being mindful of how we welcome students into spaces. Yes, and being inclusive. All of those things. So thank you everyone for sharing. I know the graphic that's up on the screen is familiar to those of us who were here last month. And for those that are new to the space, this is, we talk about student success systems, and student success systems exist because there are enabling conditions that leaders are setting and teams are setting within schools. And those elements that are very necessary for student success systems include supportive relationships, what we just heard about in the video today, having actionable data. I really appreciate that, because there's some places where they're data rich but information poor, or the data isn't timely, it isn't relevant, it isn't actionable. So having actionable data, and then having student-centered mindsets. What do we think? What do we feel about the young people in our communities and what they're capable of? And then all of those, as you can see, are wrapped around the improvement actions that are co-created, emphasis on co-created with adults, with children, with our families and such, so that all students are successful, achieving at high levels in communities where they have a say, in communities where they are connected, in communities where their well-being is sought after. And so today we're going to be diving into elements 1 and 4, which are supportive relationships and student-centered mindsets. And so let's look at a quick description of the elements. All right, so element number 1 is around strong supportive relationships, and there is a link to this student success team's reflection and action tool in your activity guide. If you could open that up as well, because we're going to have some time to reflect on this in a moment. And so for those who have just joined, Sophia, if you don't mind, could you please redrop the link to the activity guide so that they can get in as well? So when we talk about strong supportive relationships, we don't just mean relationships between the students and other students. We don't just mean the relationships between the teachers or staff and the students. We're also talking about relationships between the school adults and their care, and the parents and caregivers, as well as the staff to staff relationships within the school building. All of these are important factors within when we talk about student success systems and talk about student success, period. And so what we want to do is we want to spend some time just really reflecting on these types of relationships in our buildings. In some cases, you know, some are going to be stronger than others, and that's okay. But we just want to make sure that we take a moment to pause and take a look at where we are in that. So on the next slide, we have what we call the quality relationships continuum. So as you're opening your activity guide and we're looking at element 1, you're going to see in your activity guide the different types of relationships along with this continuum. So let me kind of give an overview of what the continuum entails. Co-generative and collaborative spaces are those in which both parties are not only having a seat at the table and a voice at the table, but they also have power in the decision making. So they're co-creating. Cooperative relationships are those in which the parties are working together, yet decision-making power exists with one of those parties and not both. When we talk about disengaged and apathetic, we're talking about relationships where the parties are in this like status quo, business as usual relationship where there's little connection whatsoever. And then lastly, when we talk about contentious relationships, those are the relationships that are actually oppositional. They're defiant, that folks are at odds. Both parties are at odds with each other. There is no collaboration. There is no connection. There is no building. And so what I want to do now is give you about 3 minutes. If you would take a look at your relationships amongst your students to students, school adults to students, staff to staff, and school adults to our parents and caregivers, just take a moment to assess and just check off where they are on this continuum. If you are looking for some additional support and like, how do I determine that? If you click in your activity guide on the hyperlinked Student Success Systems Team and Reflection and Action tool, and go down to pages 8 and 9, there are some highlighted look-fors that can help you determine that. All right. So we're going to take 3 minutes and then we'll come back together at the end of the 3 minutes. Hey everybody, that's been about 3 minutes. Hope you were able to think about and assess and make sure that you have completed that. Why? Because we're about to take a poll. I love polls. And based on your reflection, which of the relationship type needs your attention most? So take a moment and think about it. Based on what you just scored or assessed, which of these relationships do you believe based on that requires your attention most? We are going to share the results. And what do we have here? We're showing that, wow, 2/3 of our folks are saying school adult to student, and then secondly, school adult to parents or caregivers. That's interesting, interesting. And we're going to hold on to this because Sarah is about to walk us through the next phase of our time together. All right, Sarah.
Right. Thank you so much for that. So that's super interesting data that it makes sense to me that we are most concerned about our relationships with those that we're serving in our schools, the students and their families. And I think what we are going to push into next is the idea of the fourth component, which is shared set of student-centered mindsets, which really lives in the staff-to-staff relationship. It's what are the mindsets that support our work together? Are we sort of operating from the same playbook? So shared mindsets, we are really talking about adult mindsets that support strong success systems. And we don't think of them as fixed. They're not something that we just show up with. We think of them as something that develops over time through our adult collaboration. So we believe that you can influence these shared adult mindsets. You'll see that the tool that you opened, they're listed here on the slide. They're also listed on page 3 of your activity guide. And if you scroll down in the tool that you opened to page 19 and 20, you'll see that we highlighted some look fors there as well. So I just wanted you to have those as I talk about it a little bit. The ones that are listed in the tool, we think of those as a starting point. They are not meant to be an exhaustive list, and they are about possibility thinking. If you look at this word cloud that we have on, you can see the list sort of in summary words of the mindsets that are in the tool. It's really about believing in the capacity of both students and adults to grow. That's sort of the big picture of what we're talking about. And ultimately, these mindsets make room for students to feel seen and relationships to grow. That's why we paired these two components together. And then as we invest in those relationships with young people and each other, our sense of possibility expands. So what we want you to do is take a minute, look at the list of mindsets, either in the activity guide or in the reflection tool, pages 19 and 20. And we want you to think about which mindset you need to foster to strengthen that relationship you just said needs some work. So you said either student-adult relationship needs some work or adult to caregiver needs some work. Which mindset would help you really strengthen that relationship, do you think? Take a second and think about that. This is just, I'm going to count to 20 in my head while you contemplate. Don't need the music, but I appreciate your thinking. All right, so you have in mind a relationship you want to strengthen, and you have in mind a potential mindset that might help you strengthen it. Well, I want to make one reminder, and then we're going to ask you to go into some trios for some dialogue. The space where these mindsets show up is in our dialogue with each other as adults. It's when we're reviewing student progress or strategizing about how to meet their needs. And that's what the look for is in the tool, how they are oriented. They're thinking about where do the mindsets actually show up in practice. So even if you're focusing on the relationship with students, between students and adults. How we're going to know what we think about that is when we are talking with each other in our team meetings. So I want you to think about the context, right? We're not following each other around in classrooms. So that our evidence for how the mindsets are living is in our dialogue with each other. So as you think about that, we're going to send you off into trios to do some dialogue about what you are thinking about in your own context. So you'll share what's the relationship you're focusing on, how did you rate it on the scale that Crystal shared with us, and what mindset did you choose and why? Why do you think that mindset would help strengthen that relationship? In your trio, each of you go around and share, and then open up some space for discussion. I think Sophia's she's already dropped the question in the chat. What is needed from us as leaders to develop those shared mindsets necessary for strong and supportive relationships? So you can think across your context, what do we need to do to support adults to build those mindsets? All right, we're going to head off into those trio conversations. Do we want to pause the recording while they're in the breakout? Welcome back. Welcome back, my friends. We wanted to save a little room for some whole group dialogue. What is coming up for us after that conversation? Maybe an appreciation for the conversation, or a takeaway, or a next step that came up for you. So space is open for our dialogue. Not just in the chat. We want to put some voices to it.
Well, I'll jump in if that's okay.
Yes, please, Sherry.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Sherry, and I work in Albuquerque Public Schools in New Mexico at the district level. And I think one thing that really resonated in our conversation, and I was grateful for, was the importance of building trust as like a really foundational thing. And now that I'm thinking about it, we were talking specifically about school, adults to family, but it's true in any relationship that was listed. And Electra was just able to share, one simple thing she did during the pandemic was to make those positive phone calls, and just how it really began to solidify the relationships. And I think we all were like, oh yeah, like that's a great place to start. So I appreciated that suggestion.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I will also say we've had the experience of sort of thinking in too much of a binary way about trust, that you like build trust and then you take risk. And we actually have learned it is by taking risks that trust is built, and how people respond when you do it. Yeah, I see people nodding. Jump on in. Candace, are you trying to tell us something? Okay, other voices. A takeaway, an appreciation, a next step. What's coming up?
I'll share. Christina and I had an opportunity to talk together, and we had selected the same area of need in terms of staff and student connections. And we talked a lot about the mindset of success for all, and that we say all means all, but we don't really mean all means all. It's success for the students that I don't have to work harder than the norm to reach or teach. And it's not, I don't think, an intentional dismissing of those students. I think for some of our staff, they just don't know how to reach them. Christina mentioned, we have staff that are still teaching for the 20th century and not the 21st century. So they're struggling with that shift of what's next for the students that are now in front of us. It's a different generation of students. They have different access to information. They need different supports to be successful when they leave us. And for a lot of our seasoned staff, it wasn't a part of their training. It might not be a part of their current strengths. And so they just kind of want to sit where they're still comfortable. And that then causes additional conflict. We also talked about like raising the bar. So sometimes teachers think that by setting the bar low, that will create those relationships that they're looking for. And it's really exactly the opposite, that teachers really need to focus on setting high expectations. I care enough about you to set these high expectations, and I'm going to do everything in my power to get us all there. So those are some of the things that we talked about.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing. We got time for at least 2 more. Come on, I know there's some wisdom in this group of women. Let's go.
Sarah, I think Candace was trying to unmute again when our previous speaker was speaking. So Candace, if you could try again, you might just need to lean in closer to your computer or whatever device you're utilizing to speak through so we can hear your voice. Yeah. Oh, it's a phone error. Oh, so sorry, Candace.
Feel free to drop it in the chat.
Drop it in the chat. Yeah, I don't want to lose it.
All right, well, I am going to feel free to comment, but hearing the silence, I'm gonna let you all off the hook. If you have a takeaway or an appreciation you're willing to share in the chat, we'd love to see it. We're gonna do a few closing moves. One is hold a little space for feedback survey, and then share a couple of announcements and resources. So Chris and I are doing this series through the new year, and so we'd love your feedback on how you experienced today so that we can keep improving as we go along. We're just gonna hold a couple minutes for you to do that, or being willing to offer us your feedback. As you finish up, just a couple of quick things before we head out. First, we will gather again in December on the 13th, where we're going to focus on student success teams in action. And if you're interested, there's a link going into the chat, or you can go to our website, which is where the link is taking you, to register for that event. Or subscribe to our newsletter to keep up with what's going on in the community of practice, just in case December 13th is a conflict for you. And then finally, both in your activity guide and on this slide that we're showing you, we've shared a few resources that Chris and I are familiar with that help us think about relationship building. So there is a report called the Foundations for Young Adult Success out of the University of Chicago's consortium on school research. We've used extensively. We highly recommend. The Search Institute. I saw there's someone here today from the Search Institute. Hello, Mara. Their work on developmental relationships. We actually give their survey to a bunch of our schools. High Tech High, there's an empathy interview protocol that High Tech High has shared with everyone. It's a way to engage with young people about their experience. And then, of course, there's the tool from Grad Partnership for reflecting on your student success team's work. And then finally, from PERTS, there is the Elevate survey, which surveys students about learning conditions in their classrooms. So we hope that you will explore those tools and see how they could help you in building relationships or developing those shared mindsets. Chris and I are going to hang out here. That's all of our program, but we're happy to hang around for questions. If you have any, we'll stay on. Thank you so much for being with us today.